Joining me now in the Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who is the chairman of the Budget Committee and a member of the Judiciary Committee. Senator, always a pleasure. Thanks for being here. Okay. Give us your reaction to the indictment of Jim Comey.
Well, I think it's a long time overdue to hold somebody accountable for Crossfire Hurricane, the most corrupt investigation in the history of the country, not just the FBI. And this is the tip of the iceberg. Now, he's presumed innocent until proven otherwise. If I'm the Department of Justice, I better get my best lawyers on the field because Patrick Fitzgerald, Comey's lawyer, is a great lawyer. But the idea he leaked classified information to create a narrative politically, I think that's a strong case. But there's so much else. For 10 years, I've been talking to you about this. Crossfire Hurricane was opened up in July 2016 along the premise that Donald Trump was an agent of Russia. They'd had a golden shower experience in Russia. He was corrupt in terms of his dealings with Russia, that he was working with Russia to undermine the 2016 presidential election. That was in July of 2016. They wound up getting 5 warrants against Carter Page, an American citizen who was allegedly involved in this plot. Well, in August of 2016, less than a month of opening up the investigation, Comey was in a meeting with Obama and Brennan and others, the Vice President Biden, where there was intelligence presented that it was designed by Hillary Clinton, the narrative. Her campaign was starting the narrative that Trump was associated with Russia to get away from the fallout of the email server scandal. And September the 7th, a couple of months later in 2016, Comey received a memo from the intelligence community, an investigative lead, suggesting that it was Hillary Clinton's campaign who signed off on the plan to link Trump to Russia to avoid her problems. Now, the question is, did they ever take that allegation seriously? He told me that doesn't ring a bell when I asked him in 2020. Can you imagine the Republican candidate for president that you got a memo from the CIA saying it may be his opponent who's starting this line of inquiry and the FBI did nothing about it? So Patel's going to tell me of whether or not they opened up an investigation. So every time there was some exculpatory information, the court never heard about it. It was swept under the rug. So by January of 2017, the man who provided the information to steal for the dossier, paid for by Hillary Clinton, used to get warrants against Carter Page, said to 2 FBI agents in January of 2017, this is all bar talk, hearsay. It was never meant to be used in court. And they still went after Carter Page with a warrant 2 more times. And finally, every person who signed the Carter Page warrant said, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have signed it. That is stunning.
That is stunning. If I knew then what I know now. Why didn't they know it then? They were all key people in those committees.
That's the whole point of the case.
Right.
I'm not so sure that Sally Yates did. I'm pretty sure she didn't. I believe that Comey knew then what we all know now and ignored it. I believe he withheld exculpatory information from the court because he wanted Trump to be found guilty. He wanted to destroy his presidency after he got elected. Strzok and Page tried to make sure Trump wouldn't be president. The memo from the Intel Committee in September 2016 was addressed to Comey, suggesting Hillary Clinton was behind this, and a copy went to Strzok. Did they take it seriously? I want to know that answer to that question.
What a shame to have our most important law enforcement agency so politicized. Do you believe that there's more criminality here than we know from these 2 charges? And what do you make of the Comey case just getting assigned to a Biden-appointed judge? Judge Michael Nachmanoff has the case.
I'm just going to assume the judge will do his job. I said 5 years ago in 2020, I was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, all this stuff you see on TV. Ted did a great job. I asked him a bunch of questions about, are you telling me you don't remember getting an investigative memo from the CIA suggesting that Hillary Clinton's behind all this and that Trump may be a victim of a political attack? He said, that doesn't ring a bell. Now we know in August, he was in the White House where they talked about this a couple months before he got the memo. Also in January, 2 FBI agents interviewed the Russian who gave Steele all this information
Right.
about the golden shower and about all this
Yeah.
corruption. That guy told two FBI agents in January 2017, is bar talk, is hearsay.
Right.
So am I to believe that now you have a sitting president? The FBI had exculpatory information from the guy who prepared the dossier, and it never made it up to the FBI director. The guy is the sitting president of the United States by January of 2017. This stinks to high heaven. I think there's criminality everywhere. You have a duty to inform the court when you find exculpatory information. You have a duty to investigate more than one potential outcome. The reason they didn't investigate, the reason they didn't disclose, the reason they leaked information is they're trying to take Donald Trump down. Remember when Strzok and Page talked to each other? Surely he won't win. I hope he loses $100 million to nothing.
I remember. We've got all of the texts back and forth, but I wonder about this obstruction charge. Some people feel that the obstruction charge against Comey is even more powerful than the lying charge. So what do you think in terms of this second charge of obstruction? You've done a lot over this last 10 years in terms of doing hearings, sending letters. Did they obstruct the case for you?
Well, I think he lied to me, and I said this in 2020. I went on TV that night. I do not believe that it did not ring a bell to him that he got a memo from the CIA saying that maybe Clinton's behind this. You're talking about the nominee for president on the Republican side, Donald Trump. You get a memo from the CIA, not some guy on the street, saying we have intel. This whole Russia stuff may be started by her campaign. She actually signed off on this plan. So I don't believe any of that, but it's up to a court of law to prove it. Here's what I think. I think obstruction was more than leaking classified information. I think the obstruction includes withholding exculpatory information to the FISA court where he had a duty to do it. I think the obstruction includes lying about the grand conspiracy here. Not only, and I think that obstruction includes not investigating leads that could have exonerated Trump. They wanted Trump to be guilty. Every time they had information that it may not be him, they ignored it, they withheld it from the court, and when asked about it, they lied about their actions. I think this is much bigger than leaking classified information.
All right, I want to move on to what you're doing now with Russia, but before I do, real quick, do you think there will be any other indictments in this?
I think there's a conspiracy charge that could be made. Again, he's presumed innocent, but this obstruction goes well beyond leaking information, classified information. I think there was an effort to withhold exculpatory information, not to investigate credible leads that Trump may not have done this. And I think there was lying all over the place about it. And you got to remember, the document used to get warrants against Carter Page 5 times was produced by the Clinton campaign, bought and paid for. Can you imagine in this country if a Democrat was being pursued and the document used to pursue that Democrat was paid for by the Republican Party?
Unbelievable. Senator, let me move on to your efforts to stop this war on Ukraine. Senator, in terms of Russia, you've had a bill now for a long time talking about the consequences on Russia. What are you going to do?
Okay, I want to move this bill. Now, what did President Trump do a few days ago? He made a statement that I will sell to Europe, NATO, all the weapons Ukraine needs. They will buy them from us. This is a game changer. There's two things that need to happen to get Putin to the table. More weapons, American weapons for Ukraine, and less oil money for Putin. So, President put a tariff on India for buying cheap Russian oil. He's talking about going after China. The Europeans need to up their game. My bill, with 85 co-sponsors, would allow the president to impose tariffs on any country buying cheap Russian oil who does not help Ukraine. That's China, India, and Brazil. We don't set the tariff. He sets the tariff. He can modify it at his discretion. But we're going to give him the power to go after people who buy cheap Russian oil, to break the bank in Russia. Without oil money and gas money, Putin can't continue the war. To my European allies, follow Trump's lead. What have you done to China and India? So this bill is going to pass. And we don't talk about this enough. There are 20,000 Ukrainian children that have been kidnapped by Russian forces. They've been sent to indoctrination camps. They've been separated from their families.
Unbelievable.
Putin's Russia. I want to make Russia a state sponsor of terrorism under U.S. law until they return these 20,000 children. So what am I going to do in October? Push the idea that Russia should be a state sponsor of terrorism under U.S. law unless they return the children. Pass the bill that would give President Trump tariff authority, secondary tariffs against those who buy cheap Russian oil and gas. And why do I want to do that bill? To show the Europeans and the world that we're behind Trump, that we believe President Trump is on the right track to hold those accountable who buy cheap Russian oil to benefit their economy, that the Congress is with President Trump. To my European friends, you need to go after China and India.
All right, great point there. Senator, we'll be watching your work on that for sure. Thanks so much for being here this morning.